Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is the sequel to Final Fantasy VII Remake, which is part of a trilogy. This is a remake of the original Final Fantasy VII, but if you're here, you probably already know that. Like all my other reviews, I'm going into this review completely unbiased. I'm a huge fan of Final Fantasy, with Final Fantasy X being the all-time greatest, but Final Fantasy VII definitely holds a warm place in my heart. So I was super excited to not only get the remake, but to get the sequel to a game that completely redesigned one of the greatest JRPGs of all time. When they first announced that Final Fantasy VII was going to be remade into a trilogy, I was kind of confused. How can you make a game that is one game into three games? It just didn't make sense to me. But after playing the first and second one, I can definitely see how. There's just so much content here. And it's insane after playing the first one, seeing how much more content Rebirth has than Remake. Rebirth's story takes place directly after the events of Final Fantasy VII Remake. Your story progress doesn't carry over or anything like that, but you do get some DLC summons for completing the game and completing Yuffie's DLC. Now, Yuffie's DLC is not really necessary, but I do highly suggest playing it if you haven't already, just because there's some story elements to it, and you do get a summon from it, so why not? Now, I'm not going to really talk about the story in Rebirth just because I don't want to spoil it for you. It's definitely something that you should experience for yourself. What I will say though, like I said earlier, the events of the game takes place after the first one. So you are just leaving Midgar, and it's insane going back and thinking about how Final Fantasy VII Remake was, and it felt like a more linear experience, and they did a great job at making Midgar seem huge like it is, but the second you take a step out of Midgar and you just see the open world and what Rebirth has to offer, it's when you know you are truly in for a just extraordinary experience. Now, you get to see some of Final Fantasy VII's greatest locations. I know my two personal favorites were Cosmo Canyon and the Gold Saucer. I remember playing PS1 and seeing them on the tram and just everything lighting up. Or that part in Cosmo Canyon when he's discussing the the solar system and how Mako works, and just being blown away by all the vivid colors and just how beautiful everything is. So I was so excited to be able to see that in this one, and it did not disappoint. The game is just gorgeous, and the story is definitely one of my favorites for Final Fantasy. It doesn't beat Final Fantasy X. Let's not get carried away there, but this is definitely a Final Fantasy story worth experiencing. The gameplay also improves on pretty much everything from the first one. One thing I didn't like though is the leveling up system. And I'm not taking points away for this or anything like that, but I do prefer the first leveling up system over this one. In this one, you get books or folios and you have to upgrade stuff through there. And in the other one, you got your weapons and you upgraded your weapons. I actually preferred that over the folios. My biggest gripe with the folios is you couldn't expand out. You just had to be kind of zoomed in the whole time. It just didn't really work for me, but you know, it's a grid system and you level up as you get levels. You get 5 SP that you can use to upgrade different parts of the folio, and I just didn't really care for it. I really liked the weapon upgrade system of Remake versus Rebirths. Now, if you've played Remake, then you pretty much know how Rebirth's gameplay is. If you haven't, then it's an action RPG. You get to control any of the characters and go into fights. Now, you can change it to a tactical, kind of more classic, where it's turn-based and everything. I've never used it, so I don't know how well that works or anything like that. I've always just played it how the game was meant to be played. But I will say it works really well. The gameplay is just so fun, and it was fun in the last one. I mean, I had a blast with the last one, and this one just really, really works. The fact that you get this open world area too, where you can just explore, and each of these different locations, like the Coral region or Gangaga, like they just look so much different, and they put a really, really great amount of detail in making these different regions feel different. Now, not only is there the story, the side quests, the worlds and regions to get lost in, but there is so many other things to do in this freaking game. You can spend hours and hours and hours just exploring and doing all this other side content and not even touch the main story. Not only is there world intel with Chadley where you go and figure out different things around the different regions, but you also have different games you can play. You have Queen's Blood, which is a full-fledged card game that is a blast. You go around challenging other people in it and increase your Queen's Blood ranking. There's the Gold Saucer, which has so many games to play and so many different things. Chocobo Racing, which is just so much fun. It was a blast in the original and it just works really, really well in this one. There is just so many different things that you can do in this game to get lost and has just spent hundreds of hours having fun. Now let's talk about music and graphics really quick. The graphics in this game, oh man, this game is gorgeous. It is a beautiful, beautiful game, and I just fell in love looking at the different regions and the scenery and everything around you. The final cinematic in the game, the very, very last scene, was just a jaw-dropping, beautiful, beautiful scene, and it's gorgeous. I can't even talk about it. You'll see when you get to it. But I really think this is one of the best looking PlayStation games, one of the best looking games out there in general. The music in the game as well is absolutely fantastic. It is just, Final Fantasy. They just have a great way of making just fantastic music. And it's cool to see that a lot of the original songs from Final Fantasy VII make a new appearance, and a lot of them are remastered or altered to new versions. When you're doing the Chocobo Racing, there is literally like 4 or 5 different songs that are the Chocobo Day Grasslands, but different. And it's so cool to see all these songs that I grew up listening to, that, I have memorized, but these new versions. So the music of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, like every other Final Fantasy, is just amazing. Now, I don't go around handing out 10s out of 10s very often. I think I've only done it like once or twice in my time as reviewing. And what always stops the game from being a 10 out of 10 are bugs and glitches. Well, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has some of those. Let's go into everybody's favorite section, bugs and glitches. So, glitches. We'll start with the first one that I hit. Early on in the game, when you get your Chocobo, you can run up and do, I think it was working on proto-relics with Chadley, and I ran up to this section, up this mountain, and the game kind of like froze. I could see that things were still moving. My characters were kind of sitting on their Chocobo, and you could see wind in the background, but nothing happened. I gave it about 5 minutes, and then I force closed my game, and I lost about 15 minutes of gameplay. After getting back to that point, Chadley popped up immediately on his video cell phone thing, and I was like, okay, so glitched, and it didn't let me see that immediately, and I had to close out the game. That was the first thing. I also ran into times where characters would fall through different objects, or enemies would go through different objects. The worst thing that I think this game suffers from is clipping. There are a lot of times different objects will get clipped to people. I had a time where I was in a cutscene and a inflatable pool was kind of sticking on an NPC. It was kind of funny, but also when you go to run or when you're in fight, stuff like that, your character will sometimes clip on the ground. This was really, really bad in a certain chapter where you get to play as Red 13 for a bit. I had this happen with Cloud a little bit as well. But there's a chapter with Red 13 where you go this area. I'm not going to say too much more past that. I'll have it on screen. But when you're running with Red 13, he gets stuck on the ground. He kind of stutters there for a few seconds and then jolts forward. And then you start running again and he gets stuck on the ground. And after a few seconds, jolts forward. And I had this happen pretty much that entire section with Red 13. It might have been like a 30-minute to an hour section. And unfortunately, it happened pretty much the whole way. I really, really disliked that. It was a huge huge headache having to do that chapter, and I really think if it wasn't for these bugs and glitches, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth would be a 10 out of 10. I absolutely loved this game with all my heart, and I feel like this is by far one of my top favorite Final Fantasies of all time. It's not dethroning 10, we don't have to get carried away there, but it is just an amazing, amazing game. And if it wasn't for these bugs and glitches, I could definitely say this would be a perfect game. Unfortunately, with all the issues I had, I would give Final Fantasy VII Rebirth a 9.5 out of 10. Now, as far as the trophies go, if you have any questions about them, let me know in the comments down below. I managed to get quite a few of them, and I have a lot of 0.1% trophies. I do plan on going for the platinum. It's just going to probably take a little bit. I want to say from stuff I was seeing, it takes about 150 to 200 hours. I'm almost at 100 hours, so I still have a little bit of ways to go. If you are trying to get the platinum, just be warned, you are going to have to do every little thing in this game. That includes all the challenges. That includes completing all the challenges on hard. That also includes doing all the fights. Just every little thing you can think of, you're probably going to have to do it. So just be warned ahead of time. And if you guys have any questions about the trophies, let me know in the comments down below. I do have a few of the 0.1% rarity trophies. Killed this game. I absolutely killed this game. I love it. But other than that, this is Chris with Platinum Reviews. Thank you so much for watching. If you do have any questions about the game, let me know down below. If you haven't yet, I do have an unboxing of the collector's edition. That beautiful, beautiful Sephiroth statue's just staring at me every day. So if you haven't checked that out, be sure to check that out on my channel. And if you get stuck on any portion of the game, I do have a few videos for some tips and tricks and whatnot. As always, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like the video. This is Chris with Platinum Reviews. Keep getting those trophies, and I'll catch you on the next video.
I know I shouldn't have.
Cloud! You asshole!